We started the show today by talking about self-driving autonomous vehicles in the wake of the announcement by our provincial energy minister the other day that he would like to see half as many cars on the road by 2050 as there are now. That's a reduction of roughly 3 million cars in this province. And I specified at the time when I asked the question because it doesn't seem at all feasible given there are no alternative being offered right now. There's nothing. I mean, public transit, great if you happen to live in the middle of Montreal, not so great if you happen to live anywhere else, not just in the city, but anywhere in the province. Got a note from someone on the text line saying he lives in Thetford Mines. Good luck getting around there. And distances are far. There's no public transit. You can't even take a bus into Montreal, is what he said. So this comes in the wake of an article I read in the Washington Post and another one today in Letter Tech, which talks about what's going on. And I think this is kind of one of those situations where you look at a city, a big city like San Francisco, where they have been sort of trying out the idea, testing the idea of self-driving cars to see, well, in real life, how does it work? And the results, I think it's fair to say, have been less than impressive. TRISHA THADANI is a technology reporter at the Washington Post on the line right now. Thanks for being here.
Thank you for having me.
So let me begin by saying, in a huge step forward, San Francisco decided to go ahead and actually allow these things all over the place 24/7, right? Full-time, all day, all week. How's that turned out?
Well, it was one step forward, about two steps back this weekend. So last week we saw, or recently we saw California had approved two of these companies, Waymo and Cruise, to expand the service in San Francisco. But then following that vote, there was a series of pretty high-profile incidences that had happened with one of these companies, Cruise, in terms of their cars blocking emergency vehicles, crashing into one, causing a lot of issues on the streets. And then we saw this weekend that California regulators actually asked the company to reduce the amount of cars that they have on the streets by 50% while they investigate these issues and, kind of go back and look at their decision to see if it was the right one.
So we're having a bit of a phone issue with your line cutting in and cutting out. Can we call you right back and try this again? We'll pick up where we left off just to make it a clear signal here. We do that?
Sure thing.
Okay, let's try that. So we'll hang up. And Brian, can you redial? And we'll try to get her back on the line. That was kind of hard to listen to. So let me just recap what she said. In the city of San Francisco, the state of California, because this now is a federal issue, they said, okay. And the reason this is happening in San Francisco is because it's a hub for technology, right? And it has been for a while. So when something along the lines of these, and I think I read somewhere there are more than 40 different companies, young startups all trying to come up with the next, big thing, which is self-driving cars and to perfect them. Not going so good because, as she said right now, a moment ago, we went from being allowed to be on the road 24/7 to finding out in real life, no, this is not a great idea. So, Tricia, you're back. I want to pick up on that idea. So It turned out that after the original, sort of test, if you will, turned out with some accidents happening. I read one car got stuck in wet cement. Another one ran into a fire truck. How close do you think we are to actually having this thing roll out?
That's a good question. It's hard to say right now exactly, what the regulators are thinking. Right now, what we're seeing in San Francisco, there's been a lot of pushback from city leaders on just having this technology on the streets overall, just given the string of incidents that we've had. And there's, it's important to note here that in San Francisco, the city itself does not have control over these cars being on the streets. Rather, it's a state decision. So right now, there's just a lot of frustration in City Hall, with the feeling that this technology has just been shoved down our throats and it's not really ready for prime time.
It's interesting from our perspective because we had our energy minister come on the other day. I don't know if you heard my intro, suggesting that we need to get half our cars off the road. Never mind just, gas-powered cars, all cars, in order to deal with greenhouse gas emissions by 2050. And the question then is, well, how do we do that? But in the case of self-driving cars, am I correct? That's not sort of the goal here. The goal here is to make driving safer?
Yeah, so you're hearing two schools of thought here. So one, with the people who are very pro self-driving cars, they're saying, ultimately we're testing this technology and trying to roll it out with the goal of having, making our roads safer overall. San Francisco is a really dense city. It's a hard one to drive in. They're saying the benefit of autonomous vehicles is they won't drive drunk, they won't be on their phones. At the same time, you're hearing another school of thought of like, why are we putting our money into more cars on the street? You know, at the end of the day, whether or not it's a human or a robot, it's still a car, and it's taking up space in our congested streets. And, you know, the question of why don't we invest more of that into public transit?
Boy, where have I heard that question before? He said, looking into a mirror. It's exactly what we were talking about before. It seems like it seems like in our case, you have a provincial government that knows it has to do the right thing, which is reduce greenhouse gas emissions and get cars off the road, but there is no plan. And I'm guessing we're obviously not alone by what you're saying. Where is the plan and the billions of dollars, I guess, that it would take to increase public transportation to the point where people could simply look at it as a fair alternative?
Yeah, I know it's a really great question. And then, you know, also the people who are skeptical of this technology, you know, they won't let you forget that these are private companies who they're the ones who they're accountable to is their shareholders and their investors and not the public overall. And there's this sort of concern when you have these private companies out on the streets, you know, where does public safety fall on their priority list?
So I would ask you to sort of venture an opinion here. California is always that state sort of associated with these kind of technological changes or innovations. Where do you think this goes from here? So you have two different sides, some, and as you said off the top, in San Francisco, great, let's go ahead full blast. And now realizing not very much later, maybe we're a little too far ahead of the curve here. How does this play out, do you think?
I think right now the spotlight is really on the regulatory sort of guardrails and parameters we have around these vehicles. You know, right now it's just like kind of this patchwork and really messy system where you have the cities who are dealing with this technology on the street, but then it's regulated by the state. And then at the state, you have two different bodies. You have like the policy body, then you have one that's actually deploying the permit. So right now it's just this very messy patchwork. And I think right now what you're seeing is because there's such a spotlight on it, you know, maybe we'll see an overhaul in exactly how these are regulated and controlled at the state and city level.
So it'd be fair to say, based on what you're saying, not exactly ready for prime time and probably not in the immediate future.
Yeah, I think there's just going to be a lot of soul searching on the decision that was made a couple of weeks ago to expand this technology going forward.
Okay. Trish, I thank you so much. I appreciate your time today.
Thank you for having me.
You bet. TRISHA THADANI over at the Washington Post. So there you go. That's what's happening in San Francisco. So we are nowhere close to having anything like that even come here. So I think we can take that whole question of autonomous cars, self-driving cars, pretty much off the table for this part of the world, or for anywhere, frankly, for right now.